Alright, it's time for me to upgrade LaravelShift.com to Laravel 13. Like many of you, I don't adopt the latest version on day one, mainly because I need to wait for a few dependencies to have compatibility. But also, Shift is, well, a business that is seasonal around the upgrade. So I definitely don't want to make big changes while I'm receiving a majority of my traffic. But it seems the packages are now compatible and things are starting to slow down, so I feel more comfortable upgrading to Laravel 13. And as advertised, it is a relatively small upgrade. And in fact, so small this time that they've included an AI skill that can help you do so. Now, as I said even before the upgrade, I don't want to be competitive with AI. AI is something we use as developers now. That doesn't necessarily mean that Shift is obsolete. So in this video, I want to demo not just upgrading to Laravel 13 with Shift, but also upgrading with the Laravel skill. And in doing so, I think you'll see how they pair very nicely together. So I've cut a branch locally, AI upgrade, and we're going to go ahead and fire up Claude. Now, if you have the latest version of Laravel Boost, you can say /upgrade to Laravel 13. Now, we're going to let this run. It's going to take a few minutes. So while it's doing that, let's jump out to LaravelShift.com and we'll go ahead and run the Laravel 13 shift. So we'll enter LaravelShift.com, master branch, I'm old school, and we will run it. Now, I of course have a subscription to Shift as its creator, so I can just run this directly. All right, that's gonna queue up. It should start running here in a second. All right, with the power of some video editing, that took about 2 minutes. So let's go ahead and open up this PR. Now, as always, Shift opens a PR with nice atomic commits for each of the changes, as well as detailed comments for anything else you might want to check. Now, before we dig deeper into the actual changes, I want to point out at a high level that we have over 100 files changed. But if we look at the diff count, there's actually more removals than there are additions. So there's not a lot of changes. Again, before getting into details, let's jump back to AI. Of course, I need to make sure to allow it to do some things. So let me churn through this with some video editing. Okay, so with some video editing, Claude brewed for 12 minutes and 42 seconds. And here's kind of a summary of its changes. All right, so it looks like it bumped up a handful of dependencies here, mail coach to 10, livewire to 4. It just kind of went ahead and did it. No application code changes were needed. Laravel 13 breaking changes, CSRF rename, cache prefix did not affect this code base. No verify CSRF, okay. Okay, so one thing to note for production, the cache prefix will change. And yes, I do believe this will be noted in the Shift as well. So we could continue to push AI a little bit further, right? But again, this video is not necessarily on how to upgrade with Claude. It was really to demonstrate what the built-in skill provides. And here's what I think the built-in skill did really, really well. In fact, probably better than what Shift can do. Even though this took already, we can tell, a lot longer, it really churned through every single one of the dependencies and just kind of figured that all out. Shift tracks about 7,000 packages, so it bumps a majority of the popular package. But this actually went so far as to get like Spassy's mail coach. And again, it can do that because it's running locally. It has access to, what your code base is using, all your credentials, and it can go out and like make additional web calls and kind of figure that out, right? That's the beauty, right, of AI. It's just going to do everything it can to kind of solve the task. So that part of this skill is awesome because if you do run into dependency hell, you can throw this at it and go for it. Where it's definitely lacking is it's basically saying, okay, there's no breaking changes for the code base. And I think when we go and look at the Shift PR, we're going to see that that's not entirely true. Breaking changes kind of may be true. And then it kind of just notes one little simple thing here. And again, we could prompt and push this farther. So it does a good job in kind of giving you kind of this cursory overview. But we'll see by comparison as far as actual changes and depth of the upgrade. This is really just kind of a surface level review. And getting to that point, if we look, run and get status here, All this has really done is bump our dependencies in composer.json, right? So the PR we saw, 106 files changed. Here, 2 files changed outside of the Claude settings that I allowed. So in seeing this, now let's go and review the shift PR. So I'll open up each one of these commits individually. I always find this better, again, because the atomic commits, I can isolate each change to understand it, rather than going through 106 file changes. So the core files simply seem to add a new git ignore that's default in the Laravel skeleton. The adopt PHP attributes for class properties, pretty straightforward in the commit message. We see here that instead of these class properties on Laravel classes, it now has refactored them to use the new modern PHP attribute that's available in Laravel 13. We saw these PHP attributes start to get introduced way back in Laravel 11, and now they seem to be well adopted by the framework. They're the convention, they're what's in the documentation when you go and look at example code. So Shift performs this refactor. Its goal is to make your application look and feel like it's always been running Laravel 13. If you go look at the Laravel 13 docs, it's going to show making a command with these attributes. So that's what Shift gives you. So this seems to be a majority of the files, those 100 of files changes, are really all this refactor that we saw and why the diff count was so close. So moving on, just some simple PHP unit stuff getting added here, again from the default Laravel skeleton. It looks like I was using the old validate CSRF tokens. It's now called prevent request forgery. Okay, so just a tiny name change there. We get all the dependency bumps that for the packages that Shift tracks, so lots of stuff here. Looks like it updated our Vite configuration. Okay, cool, nice. Kind of forgot about that one, to be honest. And added in some of the new composer scripts that are, again, part of the default skeleton. These are due adjust, but it looks like it gave us kind of the defaults here if we want them. So again, everything's in a nice atomic commit. If there was some reason you didn't want any of those changes, you could simply just revert, for example, that composer scripts if you want. So let's take a look at the comments now. So let's take a look at this first one here. It talks basically about how these envs changed, and if you're not explicitly setting these already, you could get some invalidation after upgrading. So you probably want to go ahead and explicitly set these. What's really nice, actually, in Laravel 13, specifically, I started with this shift, but I've now actually gone and added this to previous shifts, is this new automate more with AI. And it gives you this copyable prompt that you can go back and give to Claude or whatever AI that you're using. Just simply paste that in, and it's going to go and check this for you. So while the information is here from an educational perspective, there's actually more you can do now to continue the automation. And again, that's kind of this best of both worlds, right? Shift has this excellent domain knowledge about the upgrade that it can kind of provide and help guide AI a little bit, I don't want to say better, but a little bit more, right? So we'll come back to that here in a second. Let's look through a few more of these. Same thing, more warnings, things to check for. They brought up a couple things here. It looks like a couple packages were not upgraded. Mail coach, that makes sense. As we saw with AI, we know that needs to be bumped. Same thing here, Livewire 3, we're using Livewire, so it's recommending that we can upgrade to Livewire 4. Now, technically, as it's noted here, Livewire 3 is compatible with 13, but because of that Mailcoach compatibility, as we already saw with the skill, we're going to need to go ahead and run that. Okay, so it talks about the scripts that it added, mentions a change with the password reset thing. Again, very, very thorough. Some of this stuff may not apply to your application. You can go in here and kind of check it up, thumbs down it, whatever you need to kind of let you know if you need to action this out or not. And that's pretty much the end, right? Just make sure to update your assets, which is going to happen automatically on Composer Update, so I'm not worried about that. Again, just being thorough, and then just kind of an upsell for the additional stuff. So I want to finish this out. I want to get these tests passing, but we know that we have a couple issues here. Notably, before we can really push forward completely, we're going to need to run this Livewire 4 shift. So Again, I have a subscription to Shift, so let's go ahead and run this Livewire Shift. So we'll purchase that. We'll do laravelshift.com. And in this case, we'll actually shift against the shifted branch. So let me go back and copy that. So there it is. We'll shift against that. Let's go ahead and run that in the background. So this will queue up. Start running. It should be done, and this one should be much, much faster. So I don't even think we need any video editing here. I'll just talk for a few more seconds, and let's see if it's done. Oh, yes. All right, cool. No video editing. Okay, so that ran in like 10 seconds. Let's take a look. As AI noted, in fairness, there's probably not many changes that are required here. Again, a pretty light upgrade. So I'm not gonna review everything in this. I'm just actually gonna go ahead and optimistically merge it. So we're just gonna squash merge this straight into our Laravel 13. We'll go ahead and delete that branch, and we'll go back to here. If we refresh, we should have a few more files in our change count, yes. And we should see that we now have our Livewire Shift added to our part of our Laravel 13. Okay, cool. That's gonna rerun. I still expect it to fail because we still need to go and bump ourselves a couple things. So let's go check that out. All right, so we'll jump back into the terminal. I'm just gonna out this upgrade. There's nothing here that I'm actually gonna end up keeping. And instead we'll do a git checkout on that. Oh, we need to fetch first, of course. All right, now let's try that again. Thank you. Okay. And what we know already from a compatibility perspective is they gave us a handful of packages that Shift did not change. And we know right away that Spassy's mail coach is going to need to be bumped to 10. We learned that from AI. Again, one of the things it was better at. So I'm just going to jump into Composer.json, and we will go to mail coach and hard bump this to 10. And in doing so, we've already done the Livewire change with a shift, so we should hopefully now be able to run Composer Update cleanly. This is a mix of not only what AI kind of gave us as a cursory overview, but also what Shift has bumped in this PR, as well as what it's noted in that comment. Oh, okay, looks like we have a stripe bump as well that's required. If we scroll back up, yes, Cashier and Stripe got bumped as well. Let's go check those out. So we have Cashier. I think Cashier looks okay, but Stripe needs to go up to 17. I don't know why that has the V in there. That's kind of strange. Let's just go 17.0. I think that's what it said. Composer update again. Oh, it requires 7.13. We could have just copied and pasted that, I suppose, if I read the message more clearly. This is where I was just trusting AI instead of the eyeballs in front of me. 17.3, fine. Okay, cool, there we go. Okay, so again, with a combination of what we learned from AI, as well as what Composer told us anyway, we have a compatible set of dependencies now. So again, best of both worlds there. I'm gonna go ahead and just git add dot on this. We'll do a git commit -m. Composer update. I'm going to push that up, and we'll see if optimistically the CI passes. All right, so everything's running here. We'll give it some more video editing. Okay, it took a couple minutes, but it looks like we have some test failures. Let's take a look here. Okay, so 8 failed. What is this? Subscription. Stripe. Oh. Okay, so I have a test subscription that I'm wondering if it's expired now. That happens sometimes. Let's see what else we got here. Are all these just bad subscription data? Yeah. Oh, no. Okay, here's a different one. Sorry. Let's see here. Okay, so one of these check worker test tries. Ooh, look at that. Okay, so that's interesting. In my tests, I had a reference to the public property that is now an attribute. That's interesting. 2 things about that. 1, that's not symmetrical. I probably should have referenced this through its method, not its property. But 2, it's interesting that that's not kicking down into Laravel somehow, because I'm pretty sure the attributes work both ways. So let's take a look. Check worker. Yep. Okay, so we did move tries, and that is a real attribute, right? Yes, it is. Okay, so we're getting some highlighting here for tries. We don't extend anything here, so tries would have to exist internally, which I guess it doesn't. Maybe that's the catch. So what does tries actually do underneath? Public int tries, so it sets a property. Okay. So it seems like tries in this case is very edgy. It seems to be one of those things that didn't have an underlying property the way like a lot of the model properties do. So I couldn't continue, I'm not going to be able to continue to call it, and it doesn't have its own method in this case either. But for my application, it's critical that I test that. So I feel like the easier thing to do in this case, specifically for my application, is to actually turn this into a method, because we saw in Q that it will prioritize that if it exists on the job. So let's just make a similar method, public function, not tags, tries, return an int, return 3, and let's get rid of that and this instead. So this will be the exception to the rule where I basically refactored it the other way because it's critical for me to test, and I don't want to do a bunch of dance of like saying, oh, okay, get the queue, send it this thing's job, and make sure that it has, you know, that number of tries. Again, that seems to be a rare case where the property didn't have an underlying class backed property. So let's pint dirty that just in case I did anything wrong. All right, all good. Git add dot, git commit dash m, refactor tries for testing, git push. Now in the background, I'm gonna go fix that subscription. All right, with some video editing, the tests are still failing, but now with a different error, it looks like there's an issue with some checks that I perform against the Stripe API. And my guess is these probably relate to bumping to v17. So instead of tracking all that down myself, I went to AI and asked it to churn on that for 27 seconds. It confirmed that it indeed was changed and updated any instances in the application to handle that. Just to double check, I did go out to the documentation for Stripe to see that this was a breaking change for v17. All right, there's one last thing I want to do while we're waiting for these tests to finally turn green. I want to go back to this top comment because I do think this affects more applications than people might believe. The changing of these prefixes. And it's also a good example to, again, use AI, but in this case, using the prompt that Shift now provides. So I'm going to copy this and go back to Claude and feed it in to just have it double check. Because the skill earlier said I wasn't impacted, but I really think that I am, and a lot of applications are. So given this contextual prompt, I don't think this is going to take that long. Let's give it 30 seconds or so here to kind of figure it out. Yes, I definitely have streamlined my config files. I enjoy that practice. I'm glad it's kind of still around. Okay, none of them were set. Yes, I knew that. Okay, cool. The app name is Shift, so if we run it through the calculations, here's what they should be. So it's basically saying add these to your .env. Okay, cool. So again, I would have been impacted here. The calculation by using app name and changing it from underscore to dash and all that kind of stuff, I would have invalidated the most impactful session cookie if that changes all your existing users would be invalidated on deploy. Redis prefix, same thing. Cache only affects prefix aware stores, Redis, which I am using. Okay, so I would have been affected across the board here, even though again that the skills said I didn't or wouldn't have been affected, I actually would have been. Again, I think this is a really, really impactful change. I'm surprised it's not called out a little bit more in the upgrade guide. Anyway, let's ask Claude to, yes, can you add these to .env.dev? All right, cool. Sauteed for 7 seconds. There it is. Let's do git add dot git commit dash m explicitly set prefixes. I'll push that up as well. All right, and there we have it. We finally passed. So in fairness, without all the video editing, running Shift top to bottom probably took about 30 minutes. Compare that to the 12 minutes that the skill churned on. Obviously the skill's much faster, but we saw that it wasn't very thorough. In fact, it only changed composer.json, where we changed hundreds of files in our application to perform refactors to make the application look and feel like it was running Laravel 13. So while the skill was really great at churning through our dependencies, it wasn't so great at some of the details of the upgrade itself. Again, Laravel 13 touts no breaking changes, but there were a lot of things added in Laravel 13, such as the PHP attributes, which Shift refactored to. So while the skill was faster in its result to say that we were upgraded, what it provided wasn't necessarily the same. In addition, as we saw with the comments from the Shift PR, having these contextual prompts to give to AI provided a much more thorough result than the skill did initially. That's not so much the skill's fault as it is the luck of the draw with AI. And that's really what it comes down to with Shift. It's deterministic with its upgrade. It does these nice atomic change sets to break everything out. There's no guesswork. So while it might leave a little work to do, it provides detailed comments now with AI prompts to continue automating your upgrade even further.